I was thinking recently about the term progressives. They use the term progressive in modern times for the left in the United States, the lefties in the United States. And I began to realize, as a historian, that I was kind of taking offense to that. I would hear people say the progressives, and it would just annoy me because it struck me as a political appropriation, since appropriation seems to be a big deal these days. The progressive era, from a United States historical perspective, was a widespread movement of activism, social activism, and political reform in the United States that happened after the populist movement, which is around the 1890s through about the 1920s. The main objectives of the progressive movement was to have they wanted to eliminate the problems that were caused by industrialization, so there were labor issues that needed to be resolved. And of course, the urbanization of the cities were growing faster than the infrastructure the city had to be able to help to deal with things like fresh water and roadways and sanitation and the like. And of course, immigration was an issue. We had a lot of immigration coming in the late 1800s, and the assimilation of those peoples into American culture. And of course, corruption of government, which, a lot of this, it's funny when you think about this, it's industrialization, urbanization, immigration, corruption in government. I guess these are still problems we have in the 21st century. Now, probably the big champion of the progressive movement was, of course, Theodore Roosevelt, who's one of my personal favorites. Roosevelt, I did my master's thesis on Teddy Roosevelt. And Roosevelt, of course, was president from 1900 after William McKinley died to 1908. He served for almost all of McKinley's term and was elected a second term. And because of that, in 1912, in 1908, William Howard Taft, pardon me, was elected president of the United States. And Taft was, in modern ways, we think of Taft as a kind of more conventional Republican. He was, very much in the big business, very conservative, not wanting to make many innovations in a time that needed innovations. So when it came to 1912 came around, there were people who wanted Teddy Roosevelt to run again because there was no reason why he couldn't. He inherited a term. He could at least be elected for his own second term in the tradition that had been happening. George Washington only serving 2 terms. All presidents at that point had only served 2 terms. It wasn't until the Constitution was modified after FDR's time that presidents were restricted to only 2 terms. So in 1912, he put his hat in the ring and was running for the Republican nomination. And what ended up happening is that Roosevelt easily should have been the president of the United States. He could have easily won the nomination under normal circumstances, and would have been president for a third and possibly even a fourth term. You think about all of them together, because he would have served his 2 terms there on his own. But in that, what happened is that again the Republican Party cheated Roosevelt out of the nomination through a little bit of chicanery, and Roosevelt took his representatives, walked out, and he formed what was called the Progressive Party. And again, I have some examples of Progressive Party logos and information, and you'll be seeing them popping up in the background as I'm talking about it here. And Roosevelt ran on what he called the square deal. Roosevelt said, when I say, I'm quoting him directly here, let me see if I can get it in my mind correctly. When I say I am for a square deal, I mean not merely that I stand for fair play under the present rules of the game, but I stand for having those rules changed to work for a more substantial equality of opportunity and reward for equality of good service. So, Teddy Roosevelt was an extraordinary man. And again, the issue on that is of course, is to equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. That's one of the things people want to do today, and the modern leftists who call themselves progressives. And so anyway, to bring this to an end, the progressive movement was a movement that, again, was, it came into to fix the problems in the United States that existed. His probably most well-known champion was Theodore Roosevelt. By the way, on the end of that, for those who don't know, Roosevelt ran on his Progressive Party reform movement, which got to be called the Bull Moose Party, because they asked Roosevelt, "How do you feel about this, sir?" And he feels, "I feel strapping as a bull moose." So it got to be a Bull Moose Party for a nickname. But anyway, the progressive movement was a big deal, and it helped the United States through a lot of hard times. The problem now is that they call it progressive, and it doesn't seem to be progressive at all. they're not trying to actually fix the problems. In a lot of ways, they're making them worse. They're dividing people into tribes, into groups, into exploited minorities, so they can be used against each other for the people on the left to maintain power. So I kept thinking, well, it doesn't seem fair that, that again, that the progressive movement now, which was Roosevelt's movement, is now kind of tarred with the stink of the current leftist movement. And then I realized maybe there's a point to it. My wife and I were talking about this, and my wife pointed it out to me that maybe they are the progressive movement because they progressively make things worse and worse and worse.